Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Welcome to the Black Belt Leadership Podcast, where each week I'm giving you tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do as you discover, develop, and deploy your own Black Belt leader within. This week, I want to talk about becoming a better you. And I want to ask, did you answer the question you asked yourself this morning? Or did you even know you were supposed to answer the question? Now, you may immediately be saying, John, what in the world are you talking about? I didn't ask myself a question this morning other than maybe, what's for breakfast? But here's what you need to understand. Every morning when you wake up and you have that man in the mirror, moment with yourself, there is a mandatory question that you are required to answer. It's not an optional question. It's one you can ignore, but that's an answer in and of itself. But it's a question that is going to be posed every single day. And it's a question that only you can answer. Now, I like to call it the quintessential question. Why do I like to call it that? It has only two possible answers, no more, no less. And those two answers are the same every single time the question is asked. You get to choose one of the two answers. Think of it as a multiple choice question with only two possible outcomes. Now, more importantly, when this quintessential question is asked and answered, either answer becomes a life-altering decision for you and the people around you. One way or another, your life is going to have something happen. Now, this quintessential question, you can't escape, you can't hide from, but sadly, far too many people that I know choose to even ignore the question as if it was never asked. It's as if the person staring back at them in the mirror never raised the question. But here's what I can tell you. By choosing not to intentionally address and answer this quintessential question, you're choosing one of the only two answers by default. Now, again, it is a you question. It's a question only you can answer, and the answer to the question is going to determine how you're going to lead yourself today and the amount of success or lack thereof that you're going to experience today. So what is this mysterious life-altering question? Let me give it to you. Will you today do what is required to become a better version of you than yesterday? I'm talking about becoming a better version of you. Will you today do what is required to become a better version of you than yesterday? Now, you can see very clearly there's only two possible answers to that question, yes or no. You might say, John, I could say maybe, but maybe is really a no. So there's really only two answers. Yes, I'm going to do what is required to become a better version of me than yesterday, or no, I'm not going to do it. It's a choice you and I get to make every single day. Now, understand, both of these answers, yes or no, are going to be life-changing in some way. One answer, the yes answer, is going to set you up for more opportunities and more success in life. But the other answer, the no, is going to leave you stuck where you are, as you are, unchanged. And your life is going to continue as it always has. So again, what's the question? Will you today do what is required to become a better version of you than yesterday? It's a today matters question because today matters. Now, if you're not familiar with Og Mandino, he's an incredible writer, and I love Og Mandino's writings. In his classic work, The Greatest Salesman in the World, a book my dad gave me when I was a young man, and dad was beginning to teach and train me to become a sales professional. And I spent the last 40 years of my life, and one of the areas of expertise I teach and train in is in the area of sales and marketing and training, understanding human psychology, understanding the human buying behavior, understanding selling behavior and the psychology behind it. But in this incredible work, this classic tale, The Greatest Salesman in the World, It tells the story of Hafid. Now, Hafid was a lowly camel boy who was essentially sold into slavery. He became, through a series of events, exposed to a series of scrolls that the wisdom from these writings, as he applied them to his life, turned him into the greatest salesman in the world. Now, the story, the greatest salesman in the world, is Hafid, now the most affluent and richest man in Babylon, introducing to his trusted servant, who is going to take his place, the 10 scrolls of wisdom that forever changed Hafid's life. As he begins to walk his servant through these scrolls and explain the wisdom he learned from each, he opens the first scroll. And the first scroll reveals how you and I should greet each day. Let me give you a quote from the book. The first scroll says this: "Today I begin a new life. Today I shed my old skin, which hath too long suffered the bruises of failure and the wounds of mediocrity. Today I am born anew, and my birthplace is a vineyard where there is fruit for all." Now, he goes on in this scroll to explain what it means to begin a new life. But every day when we awaken, we're asking that simple question: what will you do today to create a better outcome, to become a better version of you than you were yesterday? Now, understand, it's very easy for us to do the same things the same way over and over and over. Why is that the case? Because, as I've said many times in this podcast and in my newsletters, we are creatures of habit. Every single one of us are creatures of habit. Many of the daily tasks we engage in are nothing more than an established routine that we mindlessly engage in without conscious thought. I mean, think about your morning routine. Do you really think about and give conscious thought to getting out of bed, putting on your clothes, eating breakfast, brushing your teeth, getting in your car, driving to work, or do you just do those things on autopilot? The answer for most of us is yes. But understand that much of this program behavior in the way we live our lives was coded into our minds by other people, our family, early influencers, and authority figures as we were growing up. Now, the more we engage in these program behaviors, the more reinforce them. And the more we enforce them, the more they govern, direct, and control our lives. But as we go through childhood, the teenage years, and even into our early adulthood, we are still being exposed to new things. We have the opportunity to learn. And if we choose to learn something, our brain then seeks to systemize what we've learned so we can do whatever that task is without having to give a lot of conscious thought to doing it. But at some point in our life, something happens. And for some of us, that interesting moment in our lives happens earlier than with other people. We choose to stop learning. A study from Booktastics tells us that 58% of the U.S. adult population will never read another book after completing high school. Think about that. Over half of the U.S. populace that graduated high school will never read another book the rest of their lives. Now, the same can be said of 42% of college graduates. Now, think about that. By not reading books, by not listening to audio tapes, by not viewing podcasts, by not investing personal growth, you've shut down your opportunity to learn, to grow, to improve, to expand, to do all the things necessary to become a better you. Now, Ray Kroc addressed this, and if you don't know the name Ray Kroc, he was the brain trust behind the McDonald's franchise. Ray Kroc said it well, and it's a quote of Ray's I use often: "As long as you're green, you're growing. But once you're ripe, you start to rot." Now, think about the wisdom of what Ray Kroc said in those few words. As long as you're green, you're growing. But once you're ripe, you start to rot. Let me explain it this way. When you say no to the question of whether or not you're going to do what's required to become a better version of you than you were yesterday or last week or last month or last year, you've chosen to stay as you are And by making that decision, you've chose to start rotting. Now think about that. When you no longer are feeding your mind what it needs to grow, to expand, to become better, you've chosen to stop feeding your brain. And when you stop feeding your brain, your thinking begins to rot. When you're not learning, when you're not growing, when you're not maturing, when you're not improving at some point, here's what's going to happen. You're going to become obsolete. You know, I was thinking about this statement earlier this week as I was preparing for this podcast, and I was thinking about the obsolescence of failing to learn and grow and to keep expanding our knowledge base and the wisdom that comes from learning new things, gaining new insights, and stretching ourselves beyond what we're currently capable of doing. You know, think about the plumber, the electrician, the mechanic, or the medical professional who never adds to what he or she learned in trade school or in college. Maybe that was 10, 20, or 30 years ago. And since they got that degree, they got that diploma, they got that certification, they've never taken the time to add to their knowledge and learn to do anything new. They've not kept up with current technology. They've not kept up with the trends. They've not kept up with updates in medication, updates in new tools and resources that can make their job easier. And they've not learned how to work on the more complicated equipment that we have in our homes, the vehicles that we drive, and they're not up to date with the current levels of healthcare in terms of treating illness, injury, and disease. Would those individuals who have chosen to stop learning years ago, if given the choice, would those people be your first choice to work on your home, to repair your car, or to perform a life-saving surgery on you? I don't think so. But every day when you look yourself in the mirror, you are faced with that singular question that you've got to answer, either by default or on purpose. Will you today do what is required to become a better version of you than yesterday? That is a question you must answer whether you want to answer it or not. Now, you got to remember, successful people do daily what unsuccessful people do sometimes or not at all. But here's what I can tell you about that statement. As truthful as that statement is, less than 5% of all the people alive on planet Earth at this moment are what I would call highly successful people. They are the ones, as they see their image reflected back at them in the mirror, say, I'm okay with being okay. But the 5%ers, those people that are willing to say, today, I'm going to become better than I was yesterday, when they look in the mirror, they say to themselves, today matters, and I'm going to make today count. Now, these successful people, and I hope you want to be one of them, these successful people realize that this day, today, right now, this moment will never happen again. This 24 hours you and I are living in right now are never going to be repeated. And once this day is done, once the sun sets on today and tomorrow starts, yesterday will never be lived again. Now, a while back, I shared some insights on one of the things successful people do, and I want to revisit that for just a moment, because if you want to become a better version of you, I want to give you some tips and tools, insights and resources to do exactly that. So understand this, successful people bookend their day. Now, what do you mean by that? They have a routine they go through every morning and every evening that they have conscripted, and they follow that religiously. Understanding they can't control everything that goes on during the day, they control the start of their day and the end of their day. I call it bookending the day. So what does that look like? Well, these successful people start each morning reading something inspirational, educational, informational, motivational, or biographical. Now, if they're not avid readers, which I encourage people to become, because there's something powerful about reading and physically holding a book in your hands, but you can do the same thing with an audio book if you're not a good reader. Again, the topic matters. Inspiration, education, information, motivation, or biography. The goal in the biography is to learn something from the success and failure of other successful people. Inspiration is just that, it's going to inspire you. Education is just that, it's going to teach you something new. Information is going to give you facts and figures that's going to help you figure out how to do something better. And motivational is just that, it's going to motivate you to get out of bed, get going, and have the energy to go make a difference that day. That's how they start their morning. Now, after they read, these successful people will spend some time, a few moments, 10, 15, 20 minutes, reflecting on how they're going to apply one thing they took from their reading and apply it to their lives today. That is going to be their goal. They're going to work on applying one thing to become a better version of themselves. They then make a list of all the things they need to get done today. They identify the most important of those, what I like to call the big three, and then they focus their energy and their efforts on getting the big three done first. And then they go back to the next three and then the next three, and they find out by doing that, they have more control over their day. Now, throughout the day, I mean, life is going to bring all its challenges and obstacles and opportunities and all of the things that are going to go on, distractions, many, many things are going on. But throughout the day, there's something else these successful people do. They recite affirmations throughout the day. They're constantly reinforcing the person they want to become. They're constantly reinforcing who they are becoming. They're using those affirmations to continually remind themselves of who they are and who they're becoming. And in doing so, it boosts their self-confidence and it boosts their self-esteem. These successful people also choose to live each day in an attitude of gratitude, being grateful and thankful for what they have, the people in their lives, and the opportunities and even the challenges that are presented to them, because they see challenges, again, as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to try something new. Successful people throughout the day celebrate their wins. They celebrate the wins of other people, and they see failure as an event. They see failure as a learning experience. They don't see failure as a defining of who they are. One of the other things I like about successful people, they value other people, and they constantly look for opportunities to serve and to add value to others. Now, successful people also see the challenges of life as an opportunity to learn something new. They see the roadblocks that pop up in our way, these big obstacles, as detours that can take them on a journey of discovery, to go to a place maybe they've never visited before. But ultimately, they know they're going to get to where they want to be, or because they have confidence in themselves, they're going to get to where they actually need to be, and they're going to learn and experience some new things along the way. Now, at the end of each day, again, bookending their day, they're going to go back to what they did in the morning. Those successful people are going to go back and they're going to read information, education, inspiration, motivation, or biographical in nature. Now, this time, they're not just going to reflect on something they can add to their lives. They're going to take a few extra minutes and they're going to reflect on what they learned today. They're going to reflect on the wins and the losses and the lessons learned from each, and how they're going to apply what they've learned to improve themselves in some way tomorrow. Then they start a list of what they know is going to need to be done tomorrow. They don't prioritize it, but they make out the list so their subconscious mind can focus on sorting it while they sleep. The next morning, they awake and they start that same process all over again. Now, pay attention to what they're doing. They're putting themselves in an environment that is focused on personal growth. They're putting themselves in an environment that is focused on becoming a better version of themselves. And they're doing that every morning, And every evening and throughout the day, they're using those positive affirmation statements to keep their mindset in that growth focused, moving forward attitude of gratitude that allows them to experience life to its fullest. And this book ending of the day is how successful people and those who want to be more successful answer that daily question you've got to answer that's going to greet you and I every single morning. What will you do today that is required to become a better version of you than yesterday? Now, I had the privilege of being on a mentorship call with Dr. John Maxwell, the foremost authority on leadership in the world. And Dr. John has been speaking into my life for many, many years. But I was on a call with John today as I'm recording this podcast, and John shared an insight that Dr. Robert Schuller, the longtime pastor of Crystal Cathedral, had shared with Dr. John early in the formative days of his career as a leadership teacher. Dr. John was moving away from his world as a pastor and moving away from the faith-based world into being focused more on being a leadership teacher. And he looked to Pastor Schuller for advice. Pastor Schuller told this. He said, Dr. John, there are three important things you've got to do if you want to rise to your full potential, if you want to be successful, and if you want to be an effective leader. Now, let me share with you those three things. The first was to step up. When you know you've been called to greatness, and if you're listening to this podcast and you are striving daily to continue to live the life of black belt excellence, you have been called to greatness. And if you know you've been called to greatness, the first thing you've got to do is answer the call. Successful people understand to win the race, they first got to show up, they got to walk onto the track, and they've got to get ready to run the race. You've got to show up and you've got to step out and say, here I am. I'm ready to go. Let's get started. Now, the second area that Dr. Schuller said you've got to do in these three most important things to be successful, to achieve your full potential, and to become an effective leader is number one, you've got to step up. Number two, you've got to stand out. Understand this. If you're content to remain where you are, as you are, unchanged, you're not going to stand out. You're going to be just like everybody else in the crowd. Now, I talked about that in last week's leadership lesson. Are you in or out? And you can go back and listen to that podcast in case you missed last week's episode. But this standing out is where character and values matter. This is where your reputation as a leader is going to be defined. When you choose to stand out, this is when you have the opportunity to identify the cause you're going to champion and how you are going to make your distinctive mark in the world. Now, the third thing that Dr. Schuller shared, and I want to make sure that I pass on to you today, is you've got to, number one, step up. Number two, you've got to stand out. And number three, that Dr. Schuller shared with Dr. John Maxwell, and I'm sharing with you, is you've got to set yourself apart. You got to be able to answer the question, what makes you unique or different? You know, if you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else has gotten. And if 95% of the world is living a lackluster, mediocre life that's average, that's all you're going to get. And average is not going to get you to the level of success that you want to experience in life. So understand this. What you do is important. What is it that is about you? What is it that attracts other people to you? Well, let me give you a tip. When you learn to do what nobody else is doing, and when you become better at doing something than anybody else in the world can do it, you're going to set yourself apart. You're going to stand out. You're going to get noticed, and you're going to get ahead. And oh, by the way, you're going to be very successful. Now, think about the three things that Dr. Schuler shared. They're applicable to each and every one of us today, just as they were applicable to Dr. John. And he's become a worldwide success. He's authored more books on leadership than anyone in the world. But all three of these steps demand one thing, that you daily do what is required to become a better version of you. And you don't just do it today, you do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. You keep getting better every day. Now, these three steps require that you be intentional about the way you live your life and the choices you make every single day. As I say often in this podcast, you've got to learn to lead yourself well and make good choices. But you also, to be able to accomplish these three steps, you've got to commit to personal growth. Now, when I'm talking about personal growth, I'm talking about daily incremental change. I'm talking about 1% change. Who can't become 1% better today at something than they were yesterday? I think we can all do that. And if you and I can become 1% better today, and we repeat that process day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, think how much progress we can make over time. If you become 1% better at something each day, every day, think how far you're going to go in only 30 days. Think how much you're going to grow in 90 days, in 6 months, or a year from now. How much further down the path towards the success that you're dreaming of achieving in your life are you going to be coming closer to? Or maybe instead of thinking at it as a 1% change, think of it as getting into the habit of doing one more. Whatever you're doing right now as part of your daily routine, do one more repetition of that each day. Now, you think it's hard? Maybe you try this. Let's assume you want to get in better shape. Let's assume that you're tired of the flabby abs and you want to get your core in shape, and your first stretch goal is 100 push-ups. But the only thing you're working out right now is your thumb as you're binging Netflix and clicking the remote. Or maybe you're working out your bicep just a little bit as you're shoveling popcorn in your mouth while you're binge watching movies. However, today, that can change. If you say today, I'm going to become a better version of me than I was yesterday, and I'm going to get off the couch, I'm going to turn off the TV, and I'm going to set a goal, a stretch goal of being able to do 100 push-ups without stopping. How in the world do we do that when you've not done a single push-up in 10, 15, 20 years? What does that look like? Today, do one push-up. Just one. Not two, not three, not five, not 10. Do one push-up. Tomorrow, do one more. That makes two. The third day, do one more. That makes three. The fourth day, do one more. That makes four. Add one more repetition each day for the next 30 days. And guess what? You're doing 30 push-ups without stopping. Now, keep that up for 3 months, and guess what? You're now doing 90 push-ups a day without stopping. Keep it up, and within another couple of weeks, you've got 100 push-ups without stopping, just by building the habit of doing one more. Now, how do you apply that same strategy to becoming an avid reader? Today, read, you got it, 1 page of a book. Tomorrow, read 2 pages of the same book. The next day, 3 pages. The next day, 4. Keep adding one more page, and before you know it, you, like me, have become a voracious reader. I consume books and I read every single day. And when you do that, think about what happens. Think of the collective wisdom and insight you're going to glean from all of these authors as they're pouring their life into the books that you're reading. On average, it takes an author about 2 years to bring a book from conception to publish and actually getting the book out in the marketplace. So if you read one book a month, you're gaining 2 years of collective knowledge, wisdom, and insight from that author in 30 days. You do that 12 times a year, you've gained 24 years of collective wisdom, knowledge, and insight from reading just 12 books a year. Now, suppose you want to improve your focus and get more things done. Let's again look at the one more rule. Maybe if you look at your life and how you're living your life, at best, you can spend 15 minutes focused on a single task, whether at home or at work or somewhere in volunteering before you need a break, or before you get distracted, or before you wander off and do something else. Again, one more. If 15 minutes is all you can do, then make it a focused effort to add one more minute today. Instead of being focused for 15 minutes, today it's 16. That's only 60 seconds more of additional focus and attention to the task at hand. Tomorrow, add one more minute. Now you're staying focused for 17 minutes. The next day, add one more, 18 minutes. And before you know it, you're going to be able to spend hours in focused, intentional effort, getting more things done in less time and getting more things done than you've ever been able to get done before. Now, these are but a few ways and a few tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of you each day. Now, as I wrap up this week's lesson, I want to return to Og Mandino's book, The Greatest Salesman in the World. The success secret that's found in the third scroll is crucial to you answering the daily question that greets you with the rising of the sun each morning. Will you today do what is required to become a better version of you than yesterday? The third scroll opens with these words: I will persist until I succeed. Now, persistency leads to consistency. And together, persistency and consistency lead to more success in life. So let me ask you a question. Are you willing to step up, stand out, and set yourself apart? Will you today do what is required to become a better version of you than yesterday? Remember, there's only two possible answers. Yes, I will, or no, I won't. I love a phrase one of my mentors, Chris Robinson, shares often. When you're asked that question and you've got a yes or no response, it's not that you can't, it's that you won't. And that choice is yours if you say no. But if you say yes, you open yourself up to the endless opportunities that are always before you, simply waiting on you to say yes, to have the opportunity to see that opportunity and seize that opportunity and turn it into success. Now, I believe that every person has been put on this earth on purpose for a purpose. And for you to fulfill your purpose, it requires that you say yes to the question every single day. Don't forget that successful people do daily what unsuccessful people do sometimes or not at all. So, what will you do today to become better at something or to become a better version of you in some way? What will you do to learn, to grow, to expand, to mature, or to improve? In the immortal words of Og Mandino, today you begin a new life. You will persist until you succeed. Hey, I'm Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. I want to thank you for joining me for the Black Belt Leadership Podcast. Have a great day.